One of the most common questions I see in forums is about how far out your needle should be. I know on my videos I talk a lot about there being no hard and fast rules and it depends on lots of factors, but there are hard and fast rules for this if you want your work to be clean and easy. Your needle needs to be out between 1.5mm and 2mm, and mostly it's going to depend on your machine. If you watch until the end, I can explain this all for you so that you know how far out to have your needle and how much of it you should be using. Hi, I'm Katie Schofield, artist and trainer in the UK and offering online courses all over the world. And today I'm going to explain how your machine will affect how far out you should have your needle and what it will mean for your work if it isn't out far enough or if you have it out too far. To make this easier to understand, first of all, let's look at the mechanism of a needle cartridge. So let's look at this needle cartridge here. So this is the part of the needle here where you dip it into the pigment, and this sucks it up and holds it in a reservoir. And each time the needle comes out, it goes out into the skin, back in, picks up some more pigment and back out again every time. And this is happening obviously very, very quickly. So out the needle comes, in, picks up the pigment and then back out to penetrate the skin. So now we understand how a needle cartridge works, let's look at how it affects our work if it's out too far or not far enough. This needle is out as far as it will go, and as you can see there's no pigment to work with, it's just not getting back far enough into that cartridge to pick it up. This needle is out just a short amount, and as you can see it's going back really quickly and picking up too much pigment and the work is flooded. So how do our machines decide what length to put the needle out? Well, that's to do with the stroke length or cam. This is the distance your machine pushes the needle out each time. Most PMU machines have a shorter stroke length than a body tattoo machine as the skin on the face is thinner and more fragile than the body. This shorter stroke length leads to a softer hit on the skin, but say for areola work on the body, it wouldn't be powerful enough. So let's take a look at some machines briefly. This is my Bishop wand packer. It's actually a body tattoo machine. It's got a longer stroke length than permanent makeup machines. I generally use that for lips because they're a little bit bouncy. I'll explain why in a moment. So that's got a longer stroke length. This is my Aloor Amby. I use this an awful lot, and that's got a shorter stroke length. And this is the Xion, which has an adjustable stroke length or cam. You can actually take that apart and switch between two different lengths. So you could use this for something like eyeliner and then turn up your stroke length for something like an areola. And here is the stroke length visible in action. This is the Bishop wand packer versus the Aloor, and they've both got the same needle and they're both running it at the same speed. But if you look at the slow motion, you can see that the Bishop wand packer is pulling back and hitting out much further and harder than the Aloor. So for something like eyeliner, this would be too strong. But lips, because they've got a little bit of bounciness about them, they can take it. So the speed on your machine will decide how quickly the needle goes in and out of the skin, but the hit or the cam will decide how far that needle pushes out each time. These are both running at 5.4 from a critical atom. So the speed can be exactly the same, but a longer stroke is going to hit the skin that little bit more and probably isn't advisable for beginners. So if I have a longer stroke length on my machine, I can afford to have my needle out a little further as it will pull back further into the reservoir of pigment in the cartridge and still pick it up. With the softer machine, it needs to be a little shorter to make sure it can still pick up the pigment. So between 1.5 and 2mm, depending on your machine. The rule of thumb is if your work is flooding and messy, lengthen your needle a little. If there's no pigment in your work, then shorten it a little. None of this has any impact on how much of the needle you should be using. You are only using the very tip of the needle in the skin. Just because you have 1.5 visible, you would never go that deep into the skin. It's all about controlling the flow of pigment for your work. Don't be frightened of having your needle out the correct length because you're scared of it. You're more likely to make a mess and be unable to see it anyway. I hope this helped you understand stroke length in machines and built your confidence setting your needle length. If you aren't sure which needle configuration you should be using, then I have a video to explain when and where you should be using different needles, right here. Please feel free to ask any questions in the comments below. That's all for this time. I'll catch you soon.